In every person's life, there is a journey that we can experience unexpectedly. It might be an exciting journey or a tragic one. Some journeys of other people ends with a happy ending or a sorrowful ending. Good day, viewers. We have something to share with you about the story of a young man who survived 227 days in the middle of the Pacific Ocean riding on a boat with a Bengal tiger. The title of this story is Life of Pi, authored by Jan Martel. Before we start with the summary of the story, we have to know first who is Jan Martel and what are his works. Jan Martel was born on June 25, 1963 in Salamanca, Spain. He was the son of peripatetic Canadian parents Nicole and Emile Martel. Jan Martel is a Canadian author best known for the book entitled Life of Pi that won a Man Booker Prize-winning novel award. His book Life of Pi is an international bestseller book published in more than 30 languages. The novel has sold more than 12 million copies worldwide. It spent more than a year on the bestseller lists of the New York Times and the Globe and Mail, among many other bestsellers. In 2012, the novel was adapted for a movie film directed by Ang Lee, won 4 Oscar awards including Best Director and Golden Globe Award for Best Original Score. There are several novels that also known wrote by Jan Martel, including Beatrice and Virgil, The High Mountains of Portugal, and Self. Here are the characters that you have to know from the novel of Life of Pi. Paisin Molitor Patel, aka Pai. He is the main character of the story who grows up in India and later makes a life in Canada. On his youth days, he experienced tragic memories or moments. The ship sunk and found himself on a lifeboat with a Bengal tiger. They both survived and eventually arrived in the Mexico. The author. He was the narrator, whose voice frames the story as he interviews Pai Patel. He is a Canadian author that lives in India when he knew about Pai's story and his journeys to interview Pai. Mr. Adiru Basami, an old man whom the author meets in the coffee house in India. He is the first person who tells Pai's story, which insists the author to go to Toronto to meet Pai Patel. Richard Parker, aka Thirsty, a full-grown Bengal tiger that originally housed in the zoo owned by Pai's family named Pondicherry Zoo. The tiger was brought there with his mother by a man named Richard Parker, so that the tiger's name was named after the man who brought him to the zoo. Santosh Patel. He is the father of Pai Patel and the owner of the zoo. Santosh is a reasonable and loving father. He seeks to cultivate well-rounded children and humanely cares for his animals. Ravi Patel, Pai's older brother, senior to him for 3 years. Ravi is naughty and affectionately distracts Pai by challenging him to drink the holy water in the church, and lately he teases Pai regarding to his multiple religions. Geeta Patel, she is the mother of Pai, a loving, comforting, and protective mother. She is able to accept Pai without always understanding him. Pai was given a freedom to adopt multiple religions by his mother, who has ambivalence about spirituality. Orange Juice, the large maternal orangutan, who's along with Pai and the other animals for the short time in the lifeboat. Tomohiro Okamoto, a senior employee or one of the officers of the Maritime Department in the Japanese Ministry of Transport, who interviewed Pai Patel after his journey experienced in the ocean riding on a boat. Atsuro Chiba, Okamoto's junior colleague who also participating on the interview. The Frenchman and the Cook. The Frenchman is a castaway happened upon by Pai and Richard Parker. He pretends to be a companion, then lately he becomes murderous and cannibalistic once he's accepted on the lifeboat. In Pai's alternative version of his journey for his interviewers, the hyena is recognized as a cook's alternative identity. He murdered the crew member on a board of the lifeboat, as well as Geeta Patel, and is eventually killed by Pai. Meena Patel, Pai's wife, a pharmacist in Canada. Usha Patel, she is the 4-year-old daughter of Pai and the living proof that Pai's story has a happy ending. Mr. Satish Kumar, Pai's biology teacher at Petit Seminaire and a Muslim mentor. He is a communist, atheist, and a great teacher to Pai. The novel starts covering the childhood and youth of Pai. His family owns and runs a zoo in their hometown in India, and his father clearly understands or aware about the behavior of each animal that obviously can harm, injure, or eat them. In Pai's childhood days, his father understands how his son's mind innocent is, thinking about the tiger in their care that can be dangerous to Pai. To show how true and factual the threat is, he forces the children to look and observe the tiger on how it kills or eat the prey. In his formative years, Pai went through an important religious awakening and eventually he subscribing to a variety of religions such as Hinduism, Catholicism, and finally, the Islam. While these plural religions are not recognized by religious authorities or leaders, his family eventually does so. And for his whole life, he remains a religious follower of all his religious paths. When he was a teenager, his family plans to sell all the animals and immigrate to Canada on a cargo called Chim Chum. During the voyage, a terrible and dreadful storm takes place, and when Pai, eager to see the storm, he goes to the deck of the ship, the crew tosses him overboard and into a lifeboat. After the terrible storm, the next morning, he found out that he was accompanied with a severely wounded zebra, a wicked hyena, and Orange Juice, the matron orangutan. Under the canvas of a lifeboat, a tiger named Richard Parker is hiding out of sight. The hyena harmed and eats the zebra. At that point, follows Orange Juice. The orangutan starts a successful fight, but eventually the hyena kills her. Richard Parker finally makes himself known by killing and eating the hyena. Now, on the lifeboat, Pai and Richard Parker only survive. The remainder of the novel consists of how Pai and Richard Parker live in the Pacific Ocean. Pai knows that when adrift in the lifeboat, he must survive the elements, and that tiger will almost consume him. He easily sees that he's going to be killed by the thirst faster than hunger or a tiger, so he sets out to find a way to get some water. Pai finds supplies that are kept in the lifeboat, including biscuits, water, water purifiers, a whistle, and a sea survival handbook. With those survival stuffs in hand, Pai makes a second watercraft and affixes it to the boat, a raft consisting of oars and life jackets. He will keep out of both shark-infested waters and the immediate reach of Richard Parker with this second watercraft. Pai considers a variation of choices for survival and decides that he must tame the tiger. Even he is not able to train completely and domesticate the tiger, Pai is capable of subduing him and protecting his own area on the lifeboat by blowing a whistle and rocking a lifeboat sufficiently to make Richard Parker seasick.
Pai goes temporarily blind and losing his mind. He starts conversation with Richard Parker, in which they fantasize the kind of food they want to eat. Pai is morally outraged at that he thought of consuming the meat at first. But then, he acknowledges the preference of Richard Parker. During the imaginary exchange, there is a man in the lifeboat that appeared in Castaway. He also blind and very hungry. Pai allows man who speaks with the French accent on the lifeboat to believe that he is a trusted and true companion. The man attacked Pi and hurt him, telling his plan to eat him. Richard Parker attacked and eat the Frenchman. Richard Parker and Pi eventually found an island which is made of woolly trees, roots, leaves, fresh water, and plants. However, Pi found out a horrible discovery about the island, which causes them to leave the island where they arrive. Believing he has found a fruit-bearing plant or tree, he peels back the layers of a fruit to find that it consists of a tooth of a human. The mentioned island is a carnivorous living that consumes all the things and being that lives on it. Pi and Richard Parker goes back to the lifeboat and sail again. As the time passes on sailing the ocean, Pi and Richard Parker arrived in Mexico. After arriving in Mexico, Richard Parker ran eagerly through the wild and never seen again. Pi is taken into the custody, given food, and interrogated with the two officials of a maritime department of Ministry of Transport of Japan. The officials' conversation transcript shows that they don't believe on Pi's narration about his experience in the middle of the ocean and in the horrible island. And they say so to him. Pi stays still on his story initially, but then he gives another very similar story in which he shares the lifeboat with his own mother, a crew member of the sunken ship, and a foul-tempered French cook, who kills both Pi's mother and the Frenchman and the crewman eventually. Pi tells how he stabbed the French cook on his throat and watched him until he died. The second account looks too satisfying the questioner's doubts, but they confess to Pi that his account of surviving together with the tiger abroad, the lifeboat, is more preferable story.
Jan Martel's novel, Life of Pi is a chronological age event story about a young man named Piscine or Pi who lives for months on a lifeboat with an adult Bengal tiger named Richard Parker in the wide ocean of Pacific. In Pondicherry Zoo that owned by his family, Pi grew up surrounded by animals. After the family plans to immigrate to Canada and sell the zoo animals, the ship they're making their way meets with disaster and sinks. Pi and Richard Parker are the only survivors on the lifeboat, and they must rely on each other in a number of ways to survive the many risks of being lost at sea with little supplies. Spirituality and faith, self-perception, the concept of family, and the nature of animals are all discussed in the plot. The novel Life of Pi is a rich and complex work that discusses morality, faith, and the complexity of what constitutes reality. Finally, we had now understood how crucial, tragic, and life-changing Pi's journey is. I hope all of you learned and inspired something about on this video. That's a wrap, and happy learning! Goodbye!
Okay.